Everybody, I'm Stacy with Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. So today our topic is going to be about distracting from discouragement. And we're going to talk about how that's self-sabotaging. And we're going to talk about ways that we can relieve ourselves from that kind of behavior, from being self-sabotaging. In working with my clients and looking at their different relationships with self-sabotaging behavior, we oftentimes look at their relationship to that self-sabotaging behavior. But I'm reading a book now called What Happened to You with Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce D. Perry, MD. And it's given me a lot of insightful information too. And in this book at where we're at right now, and I love how everything, the divine synchronicities, is that it talks about regulation. And so regulation is in part of that. So if you like that that's our topic today, please hit the like and subscribe button below if you'd like to learn more about self-sabotaging behavior and how, when we're discouraged, we choose a distraction, and that being the self-sabotaging behavior. But how can you get out of it? Okay? So please, again, hit that like and subscribe button. But before we get started, I have to remind you that I am not a doctor like Dr. Bruce D. Perry, MD. So what I do with you on this channel is I share with you the insights. I love to share things that help me, that I learn. I'm not a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, scientist, any of those things, but I love those things, and I learn a lot from those things. What I am, though, is a life coach. I have a webpage called stacyforlife.com. And on this webpage, I write a monthly blog, so I invite you to check that out. But also, there's a description of the services that I provide as a life coach. So again, I hope that you'll check that out, stacyforlife.com. But let's get into this topic right now. We're going to look at distracting from discouragement. There are so many ways that people can self-sabotage. You know, in working with people lately, we're looking at their relationship with food. So there's diet and exercise that would be the solvents of those. But when people know what to do, why don't they do it? I'm asking that question lately. But, it is about taking an inventory and a look at our relationships with those behaviors that no longer serve us. So the self-sabotaging behavior distractions can be getting into somebody else's business. Oftentimes when we don't want to look at our own issues, we get into other people's business. So that's a distraction. I was talking with my friend Susan about how we do this, about how when we're discouraged, we do something else. We may eat something that isn't good for us, and stuff like this, just to self-sabotage. We may obviously there's the substance abuse, like I was saying, that sometimes people will get mad at somebody else. Resentments are like, and some of this discouragement turns to resentments, right? So resentments often make people get to that point where they're going to show somebody and they drink the poison expecting the other person to die, and it just doesn't work out well. So it just, varies in the degrees of how discouraged we are. But we do try to distract ourselves, try to make ourselves feel better, but oftentimes end up feeling worse. Perhaps after you eat that big old bag of chips or chocolate cake, you have regret from doing so. Perhaps after you do some drugs and come down a few days later, you have regrets from doing so. It's about regrets. Then you get regrets. So how do we get out of these regretful states after we're discouraged and distracting ourselves and what have you? Well, it's, again, like I said, checking out our relationships with these things outside of ourselves. And then we're going to look at those relationships with the things that caused us to want to distract ourselves that we get discouraged about anyway. Crying won't kill us. And there's nothing wrong with crying, although oftentimes it's these old tapes that cause us not to be able to cry, these old tapes that make us think a certain way. When those old tapes no longer serve us, it's time to take a look at it. So it's just about that mindfulness is that's what all that is, and being able to check in with ourselves. And when we feel discouraged, to know I'm feeling discouraged, not just going, because some people grew up in a house where the behavior was rage. And so instead of even knowing why somebody was rageful, they would go into a rage. So oftentimes we grew up in that, so we may mimic that behavior or expect that behavior from different people. So oftentimes we self-sabotage before that behavior also enacts, right? So it's being able to just be mindful. Mindful isn't about judging ourselves, it's about observing. So we observe, why am I feeling this way? And check in with ourselves. If you grew up in a house where they expected or demanded an answer right away, and you as a child didn't even know that answer, and then you were yelled at before you had the time to process the answer to a question. I know that, that was sometimes, it's happened to me, is that somebody would ask me a question or ask me something, then before I had time to process the whole question, then something else would be coming at me. That's what happens in a rage. And these are traumas when, you're children and somebody is yelling at you to provide answers that as a child you have no possible way of providing. And so even as children, I spoke last week in a video, I believe it was last week, where I talked about how we will tend to distract ourselves as children. I know that I've seen children twirl stuff, and not be looking people in the eye. That's a sign of low self-esteem, because you get scared and think that you've done something terribly wrong when an adult is in your face transferring their anger at you. So sometimes we start distracting very early on as children because we're scared. We can't laugh, you can't smile, you can't cry, because you're told not to do all those things. So it's about, and as an adult, it's a myth to think that just because we're in our adult bodies in 18 and 21 that we're all grown up. Now, legally we are grown up, and then we are responsible for ourselves, and that's why the best gift that we can give ourselves is that mindfulness, to get to know ourselves, because everything else was programmed. The thing is what I think that many of us are discovering in this day and time, when people are talking about awakening and everything else, is that programming and how we we're trauma bonded with parents or different people in our lives, and how we're learning to get into our own bodies, and figure out what's going on with us. Mindfulness it's not my mind. It's not getting into your mind. It's getting into my mind. And so I get to think, okay, because healing, as I've said before, it comes from, first off, our bodies will act up if we don't do the healing from the past. If we don't because the emotions come from the past, and then we have the emotions. Then if we don't work with the emotions, then we're going to start suffering physically from these things. They will coordinate with us. And so this is what this book talks about, and what happened to you with Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce D. Perry, MD. So let me put my glasses on so we can share. Hold on, let me find my spot. So in this book, in Oprah's part, the writing's blue, and in the doctor's part, the writing is black. So Oprah talks about, in chapter 2, it's called Seeking Balance. Now, y'all that know me, is with this pandemic stuff, I'm not really talking that much about balance, but you can have balance within inside your body, and that's, the mindfulness and checking in with yourself. So that's what we're talking about. She talks about, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but she talks about episodes she was having with her heart during a certain period of her life. And we talk about how our heart, our organs, see, a lot of us don't pay attention to our organs. And then what happens is that when they act up, when we get older and we start having problems with our organs, we have to have an EKG, and I think I've maybe said this before, but when we have this EKG, it's our electromagnetic field. When we realize that from birth we were connected to an electromagnetic field, and that everything we absorbed went into our bodies, our cells and our soul, that our soul maybe chose this life on a deeper level, but then everything went into our cells. And so we were all put here not to live on default, not to maintain the material, but I think that we were all put here to maintain a spiritual, to be able to be humans in a spiritual experience. So anyway, in this, she talks about how, she had some heart palpitations and it wasn't good for her. So she says the same is true for you. From birth, your heart is constantly sending messages about the state of your well-being. It's intimately attuned to the slightest shifts in your physical and emotional health, and when it sends out a warning, every part of you feels the effect. And she said ever since those episodes with her heart, she's developed a deep gratitude for this ever-vigilant internal alarm. In times of stress, it changes cadence, and that's been a gift. So being in a constant state of high alert can have devastating effects on your overall physical and emotional health. The correlation between long-term stress and conditions like anxiety, depression, stroke, heart disease, and diabetes is real. So it says that he was first challenged, or she was first challenged in her 20s, and she, says that she, suffered traumatic events in her childhood that were, her uprooted family, sexual abuse, and regular beatings, and, she was conditioned to be a people pleaser. So while people may not think they're hurting themselves by being a people pleaser, I know they hurt themselves emotionally, but they don't realize the physical effects that these things have on our body. It's completely depleting the energy. And so when those stress indicators were sending, she ignored them. Because we think when we're grown and we say we're not going to do something, like I said last week, that's not the effect. But see, we have to feel to heal and look at this and be mindful. So she was tuned in enough to know that she was betraying herself. She knew that, that amount of energy, that she needed a certain amount of energy. Okay. Now when she feels overwhelmed, she pulls back. She's learned to say no, hence the people pleasing she was talking about. And when she's around someone who drains her, she puts up a barrier, a non-physical wall that keeps a person's negative energy away. Okay, and she's also created a special sacred personal place, blocking out Sundays as a time of renewal. I do that too. Sometimes, not Sundays. It has to be another day because I'm busy on Sundays with clients. That's their day to be able to get their self-care. So when this is interrupted, she becomes irritable, anxiety-prone, and distressed about making decisions, and she's not the person she wants to be. So then we move into regulation. And what regulation is a lot of times people even distract themselves with this, but it's about being mindful of this. Because when you were in the womb, before you were born, you heard the heartbeat. Oftentimes you may have heard the fighting and had a traumatic time even before you were born. But there's a rhythm to this universe and this earth, hence the EKG. That's how they pick up what's going on with you, is that your body has a rhythm. Now you can choose to observe your rhythm now and maybe be proactive in healing yourself, or then we end up in the hospital with all these pharmaceuticals, which still doesn't even heal us. It's just, it fixes a symptom, but it doesn't fix the problem. So I think that, many people are becoming aware of this today. So, she has her campus, and the Oprah Winfrey, campus, I forget all the initials, but anyway, and that she saw the girls dancing. Rhythm is a part of healing, And Dr. Perry says rhythm is essential to a healthy body and healthy mind. Every person in the world can probably think of something rhythmic that makes them feel better. Walking, swimming, music, dance, the sound of waves breaking on the beach. And she says that's why, see, some of the things we naturally do are natural healers, and we just don't even think about it. That's why we rock babies, is they lack a rhythm, And she says that we're trying to help them find their rhythm to calm down. And Dr. Perry says exactly that will help us calm down as well. The emotions of people around us are contagious. When the baby is upset, it can make us upset. So we go to the baby and hold her, walk with her. We start a rhythm that is soothing to us. And if that doesn't work, we slowly shift to a pattern that is regulating for the baby. That's if you grew up in a healthy environment. But if you didn't have that, well, then you don't know how to regulate yourself. And you have to learn, or not. And then, you may suffer with some illnesses that you don't quite understand. I love to be able to correlate that if there is an illness going on, to try to figure out where it's coming from before it gets too bad. I myself have a holistic doctor, and I just love her, because When I go to the doctor, she's not trying to give me medicines. When I go to the doctor, she's not trying to put me into surgery if I don't need surgery. I'm able to be in my body, so I know what I need, for my body. So a lot of times we are so busy with our lives, we are not even in our body. And so we are just distracting. We're not being mindful. We're going through the drive-thru. We're eating out of packages. We are, these kind of things. I'm not saying that that's all bad. Sometimes you got to do that, but not all the time. So it's being able to be mindful and say, when am I doing this? I myself am mindful. I'm in good shape and very mindful, though. It's not like I just eat whatever I want to eat or not. I do eat what I want to eat, but it so happens that it's a habit. The things that I eat are a habit, so I like eating the things that I eat. The mindfulness comes in to where I say, okay, if I'm going to have carbs, because, the bread down here in Mexico is so good. And so if I want to have carbs, I may eat bread in the morning. But if I eat bread in the morning, on most days, I'm not going to eat bread in the afternoon because it's just having something from each of the food groups. Now, if I had a healthy, strong metabolism, if I was young, I would eat more. It's also being able to know. See, so many people have been programmed to eating 3 hearty meals a day, and if you're my age, you don't need to eat 3 hearty meals a day unless you're running, or something like that. And this is the thing, is most of us aren't running. So it's being able to observe exactly what we're doing at the time. Or am I working on, and being mindful is am I working on programming, or am I really checking in with myself? When you check in with yourself, you're going to be much happier with the results than if you just distract yourself and come up with a reason why you need to do this or you need to do that, and that rationalization and justification, or you put it off. I'm so proud of the people that I work with. We just start with one little thing at a time. Sometimes it's just that I'm not going to eat ice cream because, sometimes it's just I'm not going to eat chips. Sometimes it's like I'm not going to eat anything out of a package. Sometimes, and it just keeps building, and then it's like, okay, I'm feeling better now. So now I think I want to try to start exercising. So it's just doing those little things. You don't start off exercising, doing 100, of something. You start off little. It's about creating new habits, because like I said, I eat what I want to eat. It's just that I have a habit of what I like eating. And so it's not like I feel deprived of not eating something, except maybe cake. And that's about it. Is you can't eat cake all the time, but I do eat the cake. I don't deprive myself. It's about also understanding that we can reward ourselves. That's a lot of it too. Is a lot of times people have taken excess for granted, or rewards for granted. A cake would be considered a reward. Used to, we only really got the cakes for special occasions, and now today people eat cakes all the time. People watch TV all night long. When I grew up, you didn't do that kind of thing. And so it's really getting back to our roots of really taking care of not living in excess. That's not saying you can't live a good life. I'm not saying that at all. It's just saying that just because it's there, you don't have to do it. That's what I'm saying. So I'm going to close this with a quote, of course, and the quote is happiness can only be found if you free yourself from all other distractions. Because what happens is, what I was saying, is distractions turned into addictions, and then you end up chasing it. So I know what it's like to chase those addictions. So I hope that this video has been helpful to you and that you were able to get something out of it. This is a very good book. I've always admired Oprah. I don't always agree with everything that, and stuff, like some of the people like that, she really gets into or what. But I'm grateful that she lifts people up. She lifts so many people up. And she's really opened up a way for healing for a lot of people too. So I hope this has been helpful, and I do hope that if you haven't subscribed that you will, and I do hope that if you like the video that you'll hit that button, and also hit the button for notifications, because I post typically every week on Wednesdays or Thursdays, so you don't miss a video, because what we're trying to do is raise the vibe of this universe. That, when we're able to be mindful, it doesn't just extend into our bodies, minds, and souls within ourselves, but it also is a vibration and that rhythm that extends to other people as well. So I look forward to connecting with you again next week, and I wish you much love and peace. Oh, and by the way, thank you for supporting the video, and if you feel it will help other people, sharing it. But you can also support this channel as well by donating to PayPal, and the description is below in the link, okay? All right. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.